this story called Al Capone Does My Shirts. And we were walking down here, I asked you a little bit if anyone had heard of this book. And Haley said that your brother, it was one of his favorite books, right? And then Andrew said he started reading it, but he got bored. And so I was saying, you know what happened to my son? He kind of got bored with it. And you know what I'm thinking? This book is historical fiction. Do you guys know what historical fiction books are? What they're about? Have you read any other historical fictions? What about you, Andrew?
I was reading The Great Gatsby.
Okay, yeah. That is a book that's historical fiction. And historical fiction, those types of books are about things that happened in the past, true events that have happened, right? And that sometimes the stories are fictitious. So the stories might not be real, but some of the events that happened were real. They really happened in history. And I think one of the things that's important to know when you start reading historical fiction, sometimes you can't just pick it up and start reading. Now my son, who's a really, really strong reader, he picked it up and he's like, I don't get it, because he didn't know the history behind this book. So I'm going to tell you about the history behind this book, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the characters. And I think that might get you a bit more interested in this book, okay? Okay, so the story is called Al Capone Does My Shirts, a tale from Alcatraz. First things, anyone ever heard of that person, Al Capone? Never heard of him?
I feel like I remember my brother saying something about it. Isn't he like, I think he was like a famous person?
He was famous. Do you know what made him famous? Just wait. He was one of the most famous criminals. Okay? He was a real bad guy back in the 1930s. And Al Capone, and there were some other ones, he was kind of like what we'd call today like a gangster. Really, really bad guy. And some of the criminals that were so bad, they wouldn't just put him in the jails or the prisons around here. They would take him to a prison for just the worst of the worst criminals. And that prison was called Alcatraz. Okay? And it was an island in California. It was off the coast of California. And I want to show you really quick. So here we are. This is kind of a little teeny map. But here we are in Michigan. All right? And here's California. Okay? And Alcatraz was a little island right off of California here. I want to show you. So here's California. And here's a close-up map. So here it is. Now here's the thing. It's only 12 miles to get to California and to get to this island called Alcatraz. But once people got to Alcatraz, it was such a prison that kept people and they could hardly escape. That's why they put the worst criminals there. Okay? So now, do you think you'd like to see what that prison looked like inside? All right, take a look. I'm going to show you this little video clip about Alcatraz. And I want you to think about what it might have been like at that time in the 1930s in Alcatraz. You see California back here? And here's Alcatraz. You see kind of there. Lots of other things that happened to Alcatraz, but I wanted you to see what it looked like when those dangerous criminals lived. What are you thinking about Alcatraz? Seems really lonely. Huh? Scary. What might make it scary? Criminals in the middle of the ocean. Many people get to escape from Alcatraz.
No, I said that 2 drowned. Some got shot. 5 were never.
They were all dead. So once you were on Alcatraz, you pretty much stayed there, right? So it was a house for the most dangerous criminals. All right, so we know who Al Capone is. He's a really bad gangster that got caught and was sent to Alcatraz. And Alcatraz was a prison off of California, and it's not a place you'd want to be, right? So in the story you're going to read, called Al Capone Does My Shirts, a tale from Alcatraz, this boy Moose Flanagan is a 12-year-old boy, and he lives on the island of Alcatraz. I know you're looking at me like, why is he living on Alcatraz? All right, so I want to show you this picture. You all have this in your books. So I'm going to share this with you, Andrew. See if you can find this little map right here. Oh, in fact, I'll use mine. You can have that one. All right. Back in the 1930s, they needed people to run this prison, right? And they needed all different people. They needed doctors, they needed electricians, they needed guards. And the people who worked on Alcatraz had to live there, and their families lived there with them, okay? And Moose Flanagan and his parents and his sister had just moved to this island at the start of this book, right? And you can see, I'm going to show you right over here. It says apartment 2E. I live here. See if you can find where this is Moose's house right here. And you're going to learn about this character in just a bit. But look at where the prisoners lived in comparison from where he lived. In the cell house. Do you see where it says the cell house? He's right here, and the prisoners lived right there. Is he very far away from those dangerous criminals? No, he's not very far away, is he? And you see, they say the parade grounds, that's down here towards the bottom. This is where they played. Because not only was Moose on the island, but there were some other kids whose families and parents worked on Alcatraz as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Annie and Piper. So I wanted you to get a sense of Alcatraz. I wanted you to get a sense of what it looks like and the type of people that live there. And what I'm going to have you do is I'm going to have you read the first chapter right here. And it's pretty short. But as you read it, I want you to be thinking about what you know now about Alcatraz and Al Capone. And I want you to be thinking about this character, Moose Flanagan. He's going to introduce himself in that first chapter. And I want you to be thinking about how he might be feeling on his very first day of moving to the island of Alcatraz. Go ahead. Now you guys, go ahead and start reading that very first chapter in your head called Devil's Island. Okay? And it's just a few pages. And I might come around and listen. Go ahead, read that first chapter. So they've got a lot of people in there. Bad. These are bad things. Those are people who trick people. Stick them. Those are people who use guns. Buzzers. Those are people who take money. Connivers are people who trick people. Okay. So remember how we were talking about that Al Capone did a lot of bad things. These are some of the other bad things that people who were on the island did. All right. Okay. So what or why do you think Moose, or how is he feeling on his first day on the island?
I remember when it said, can the villains get in? Yeah. And he's sounding really nervous. He's like, can the villains get in?
Yeah, and there was a spot. I like how you were thinking of taking us back right back to that part. Can you tell us which page that was on? Because I know Andrew and I were talking about that part too. He's nervous that what if these criminals or villains, like Haley said, got loose? Here he is living right on the island.
Yeah, it says.
What page?
Page 5. It says.
All right, let's turn to page 5,
almost
everyone.
On the bottom, it says, they don't let the criminals in here, do they? So I'm a little bit jumpy.
Yeah, I read that part too, and Andrew, I had Andrew go back and read that part too. So he's thinking, here I am, I'm living on this island. He's worried about these people escaping, and he's thinking, what? I'm a little nervous to even fall asleep at night. And he was so nervous. What did he do? About falling asleep. What did he do? Because he was so nervous right before bed. Look on that last page, right on the last part of the chapter. That very last sentence.
He went to sleep with his clothes on.
He went to sleep with his clothes on, didn't he? He didn't even want to put his pajamas on. He was worried that, somebody might come in, so he thought, maybe I'll just sleep with my clothes on. All right, so you're getting a sense that Moose has moved to this island, all right? He has to live there. His dad is an electrician, and he is just getting a feel for what it's going to be like living on Alcatraz. Does he sound excited? No. Would you be excited? No, I don't think I would be either. All right, so here's what I'm going to have you do. I'm going to have you guys read a little bit more and read the next chapter back in your classrooms. But I want to tell you some other things you need to know before you move into this next chapter. I told you a little bit about Alcatraz in the 1930s, and I told you about that criminal called Al Capone. And here's another thing you need to know about what was happening back in that time. In the 1930s, there were kids that might have had some learning issues. They might have some challenges. They might have maybe autism. Right? Have you heard of that term before? And in that time, back in the 1930s, they didn't allow those children who had these problems come to school like they do now. In fact, they sent them away to these places called institutions. And institutions were like hospitals, okay? And these kids could not come home, and they couldn't be with their families, right? They'd leave for the rest of their lives. Can you imagine? Natalie, Moose's sister, has some challenges, and her mom is trying her hardest to keep her from going to one of these places, right? So as you read, not only is Moose feeling scared about being in a new place, he's also worried about his sister Natalie, okay, having to go to an institution. So as you read this next chapter, I want you to be thinking about Moose's being nervous about his new place, and about his feelings about his sister, okay, and what he's doing to kind of keep it quiet. Right? So I'm going to have you guys go, and I'm going to see if you can do some more reading around Al Capone.